consideration state funding proclamation. Let me read it. Biddeford School Department proclamation, whereas public education, the intellectual and physical development of children and young adults is essential to Maine's future, and whereas Maine's communities are best served by a budget on fundamental fairness and investment in the future, and whereas the voters of Maine in 2004 overwhelmingly approved a referendum requiring the state of Maine to fully fund 55% of the total cost of public education in order to ensure a strong public school system, and whereas the commitment to fund 55% of the cost of public education has never been met, forcing local communities to shoulder most of the costs of maintaining Maine schools, often through increases in local property taxes. And whereas the state's commitment to fund 55% of the cost of public education could have been met simply by not enacting the governor's 2011 tax cuts. And whereas the governor's current proposed budget could drastically reduce income and estate taxes, again primarily benefiting the wealthiest Mainers, while enacting cuts to education, revenue sharing, and health care, which would have to be borne by local schools and communities. And whereas if the governor's proposed budget is adopted in its current form, this school district could be forced to take drastic actions to balance its budget by laying off educators, reducing personnel, cutting programs and services, and asking local families to pay more in property taxes to make up for the shortfall from the state. Now therefore be it resolved that the Biddeford School Committee calls on the Maine legislature to reject any budget that takes away from education funding and the needs of local communities, and the Biddeford School Committee calls the Maine legislature and Governor Paul LePage to recognize the will of the voters as expressed by statewide referendum and fully fund the state's commitment of 55% of the total cost of public education assigned by the mayor, superintendent, and members of the school board. Looking for a motion? So moved. Second. Moved and seconded. Mr. Moriarty?
Again, some of you know I don't make a lot of speeches, but I felt this was important for us to bring forward and approve. I did write a little something. Bear with me for a minute. Mr. Chairman, Superintendent Ray, Assistant Superintendent Indoor, fellow members of the Biddeford School Committee, and members of the public. I speak to you now on an issue that we all know too well. The Biddeford School Department yearly budget and the diminishing support we seem to be receiving from the state of Maine. Many times in politics, we hear he said, she said, and they said. We have issues that arise in the district, and we are bound by policies and laws written on how we should proceed. In a time when school budgets across the state are shrinking, districts like ours try to plug the holes. I recently had an encounter with a parent that begged me to increase the funding for her son's school so that her son would have the best opportunity to get to college. I left that conversation with a broken heart and a sense of defeat when it came to the work that I had done on the Finance Committee and the 2015-2016 budget. I believe my fellow school committee member, Mr. Angel, said it best when he said he was ashamed to cut Tier 1 from the budget. On the June 2004 ballot, Maine voters approved Question 1, known as Maine School Finance and Tax Reform Carryover Measure, which requires the state to pay 55% of public education costs for K through 12 and 100% of the cost of special education. Sadly, the state of Maine has not lived up to its obligation, and in my opinion has forced districts to make devastating cuts for the last 10 years. I ask for a yea vote from my fellow members in supporting this proclamation. I then ask our chair, Mayor Cassavant, and Superintendent Ray to send this proclamation to the Clerk of the House and the Secretary of the Senate for all Maine state legislators to see and help us in this battle for a better tomorrow for all of our Biddeford students.
Thank you. Anyone from the public would like to address this? Seeing none, back to the board. Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? That's unanimous.